morning, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Hawk Blogger Mornings. I am Brian Nemhauser. You can find me on Twitter, Instagram, and now TikTok at Hawk Blogger. We are just about at 1,000 followers on TikTok, so we'd love to have you join us over there as we start to get live shows going there as well. I think this is day like 277 straight of Seahawks content for all of you, and we're going to plow right all the way through the offseason as well. We're going to get into draft talk, we'll get into free agency prep, we'll have all sorts of content for you. So now's the time to join over there at patreon.com/hawkblogger, where you get all the content, and follow us, click like, click subscribe, find out everything going on with your Seattle Seahawks right here via Hawk Blogger. And I'm kind of getting a little bit closer to my good buddy, Jeff Simmons. I'm out here in Chicago at my hotel waiting for a big primetime game, Thursday Night Football, Seattle Seahawks against Chicago Bears. How are you doing, Mr. Jeff?
I'm good, man. Yeah, if it wasn't the holidays, maybe I would have come out there for the day. But I got a pregnant wife at home, so probably not the best thing I could get away. But I'm good. I'm good. Yesterday was a pretty relaxing day. Got to watch a lot of bad football and watch some bad movies at night. So I've never realized we watched Home Alone 2 last night.
Uh-huh. Is that the New York one?
It's a New York one. And
Yeah.
my cynical brain was just pointing out all the flaws in the plot. My wife is like, the movie's for 10-year-olds. I put on like the Bill Simmons podcast, like the rewatchables last night, and I was like listening to them just like tear into the holes in the plot. And I couldn't get past it. I don't know what's wrong with me, but like the guy takes 5 bricks to the head from a rooftop and like he's up in 2 minutes. Like I don't understand.
Yeah, it's certainly not one of those movies where you can leave your brain on and enjoy it. So
No.
I hear you. I was flying out yesterday, and on one hand, I'm thinking, oh man, there's some football I could watch on the flight. And then I was looking at the games, and this is kind of my state with the NFL. I was like, I had zero interest in watching either of those games. Like, part of it's AFC related. Like, I'm just not, I'm not as interested in those teams. Part of it was just like, there's not a lot of football teams NFL teams that I want to watch. Like, if you were to say, which of the teams that if they're playing a game, you are excited to watch? I know you'll watch anything because you're a football junkie.
I'm sick,
like, which of the teams that you would like, okay, if I can, I want to watch that team play?
I like watching the Ravens. I really like watching the Ravens. They're a flawed team, but like Derrick Henry and Lamar are just awesome players to watch. I really like watching them. But there's not a lot. Like most of my interest is either like fantasy football related, and like that's why I have Patrick Mahomes on my team. So like yesterday, I was like glued in for a game that really sucked. But other than that, like I like watching the Lions. I love watching the Lions. I'd say that's the number one team for me. The Packers are pretty good, but I just don't like them. So
Yeah.
I don't like get excited about watching them. I do like this Vikings team.
Yeah. Yeah. I think they're on the list.
I think they're on the list, and the Bills. The Bills would be on the list for me. I love watching Josh Allen.
Yeah. I think the Bills are up there for me. I'm just not interested in watching the Chiefs until they're playing like a really good team. But if
So
they're playing a
sick
good
of
team, I'm happy to watch them play. I'm not anti-Chiefs like I know a lot of folks are, but the Lions are top of the list in terms of watchability, and the Bills are right up there. From there, I mean, the Bears are kind of on that list. I wouldn't say like they're watchable because they're good, but they're an interesting team, right? Caleb Williams is still a fascinating study in quarterback play. And it's probably early, Jeff, to call him a coach killer, but one season in, and there's some coaches looking for work. So, I mean, I think he's an entertaining quarterback to watch. I think the Washington Commanders.
Yeah, that's got to be on them. They're so much fun right now.
That's an interesting team to watch, right? Jaden Daniels is doing is like basically nobody's done, especially as a rookie.
Yeah, he's awesome. He's so much fun to watch. Like that game the other day where he just like pulled the team on his own on his back, and like he's getting like receivers off the street. Like Terry McLaurin's obviously really good, but like he's been really cool. Like it's cool to just see that whole team come together, and It's just like so many of these young quarterbacks, they flash and then like CJ Stroud has gone from like the most fun player in the league to like borderline to pretty close to unwatchable. That team is
Mm,
really we could talk about that and how it relates to the Seahawks in a bit, but like yeah, a lot of it's either like who are the great quarterbacks or who are the great teams. And the gap this year between like the haves and like the have-nots is so big. Like you watch the Steelers, who a couple weeks ago everyone's like, "Oh, Russ is back," and they've played the Eagles, the Ravens, and the Chiefs in the last 3 weeks, and just getting the doors blown off of them. And Russ has
mm,
been bad. And so like the Steelers are kind of like the AFC version of the Pete Carroll Seahawks, and
yeah,
like in the last, they're kind of the same, 10 wins every year, but not really good enough to ever get
that's
more than
how a lot
that.
of Steelers fans are talking about it. Like,
And
yeah,
even the Texans, who are going to host a playoff game, like they've been kind of crap all year. If you've watched them, like they haven't played. I don't think they played a good game all year, and they got embarrassed yesterday, 30-2. And look, like Bobby Slowick, I was like pounding that door last year. He might not make
yeah,
it
a lot of
back as an
people were. You weren't
OC.
alone. You weren't alone.
I that was a miss by me. He would have been it looks like a disastrous. He's done an awful job this year. One of the worst OCs in the league this year. And so it's crazy how things just go up and down. But you're right. There's like the hard truth is there's so many bad teams this year, and even the teams that we think are close, like we've seen what happened every time the Seahawks play a great team.
Hmm.
They got the doors blown off them like the Steelers did, and it's not a great look for the NFL where there's like 4 or 5 teams that matter.
Well, yeah, and the Steelers are kind of they're definitely Mike Tomlin's definitely got the Pete Carroll thing going for him, where you know he's gonna win you, he's gonna give you a winning team every year,
Yeah.
but are they ever gonna get out of that like a kind of middle ground? The thing that's different around Tomlin versus Carroll is Tomlin has produced top shelf units. Like his
Hmm.
defense has been a top 10, sometimes a top 5 unit for a lot of the past 10 years. I think if Pete Carroll had been producing top 5, top 10 defenses, I think he'd still be here. I don't think there's
Yeah.
even a question. So it wasn't just a matter of, hey, Pete is someone who can't win the big one or can't get out of this purgatory. It was like they weren't doing anything well, and they were
No.
playing defense well. They were playing offense well. I mean, they were playing offense better than they're playing defense, but that kind of wasn't Pete's calling card. So you
No.
Pete around for offense. But I kind of think about the Steelers. The other thing that makes me think of them is kind of like the Cowboys last year, who had a lot of wins, but I just never really
Yeah.
considered them a contender. There's a lot of those kind of teams that maybe beat up on. I mean, think about this, Jeff. I mean, this NFC West is not impressive,
No.
and if this group had been facing any other division but the NFC North this year, Seahawks definitely would have 10 wins, and probably you'd be talking about the NFC West winner having 12 wins, like almost
Ye-
certainly, and they wouldn't be any better.
no.
They just
No.
would
It'd
be
be
playing a
a
different division.
like. There's a pretty case you could make. They should have 10 or 11 wins right now. Like
Exactly.
they blew that Giants game in ways
Yeah.
we haven't even spoke about. And then the Rams game was just an awful. That's an awful loss. I still think they should have won last week. Like you're gonna
Yeah.
blow
They
some
they
games, so but like they should have 10 wins right now, and they're a decent team. I don't think they're a good team or
yeah.
anything close to a great team.
Yeah. Yeah. For sure. We'll talk about the game in a second. One of the things I am doing here in Chicago, because the nice thing is, the game doesn't start till 7 o'clock here, so I've got a lot of the day to kind of explore the city. And I've been to Chicago before, but it's been a while, and I like food. I'm not a foodie. I'm not a foodie, and
No,
the difference for me, Jeff, is I'm not hoity-toity about my food. I just like
me
good
either.
food, you know. I do like food a lot, so there needs to be a different word for it other than foodie, right? But in any event, I went out this morning and I was like, all right, well, one of the things you can't get in the Northwest is good Jewish deli. Like, you just can't get it. And with that, like, good bagels are pretty hard to find in the Northwest. So I did a little search for around the hotel, and I found this delicatessen, Zeitlin's Delicatessen, and it was within walking distance, so I hoofed it over there, and it's in the like a post office, like cafeteria, like food court area,
No way.
and I'm checking out, getting a bagel sandwich, and this guy, the owner, rolls up with this whole tray of fresh baked donuts that he's selling. And for people that aren't Jewish, uh, donuts in Hanukkah are kind of a thing.
Yeah.
They're called sufgan yot, if you don't know. But anyway, he had these toasted coconut cream donuts, and he's like, they're fresh out of the oven. He's trying to give me this hard sell, and I'm like, dude, you had me at donut. Like, let's go. And this bagel, man, I posted it on Twitter and Instagram. It may be the best bagel I've ever had.
Wow.
It was that good. I've had tons of bagels in New York, Boston, DC. I've had LA, Palm Springs. Like, I've been a lot of places that have decent bagels, great bagels. This bagel, man, was so good. Like crisp outside, a little buttery, and then like soft, and not like dense or doughy inside. It was just like it was a work of art, man. It was so good. So if that's the start of my Chicago Day of Food tour, I'm all in. It's gonna be fun today.
That's awesome. Like Toronto is very good in that department for like the Jewish food. Like I can name like 6 bagel places within my house, and like we have some of like the best deli. But Chicago's up there. New York, Chicago. I need to check this out next time I'm out there. So, are you
I
a deep
will.
dish? Are you a deep dish pizza guy?
It's not my favorite, but I am
I'm not a
going
fan.
to.
Yeah.
I've got a recommendation from our pal Robert Mays on where I'm going to go to get. I think it's called Pequod's or something like that.
Oh, I've been there. Pequods.
Pequod's to get some pizza. So that's on my afternoon list. I was like, I kind of wanted to hit a steakhouse. There's like amazing sandwiches here. Like there's a lot of ways I could go, but I feel like I got to get a slice, man.
I know. I actually was reading his list. I don't know if because you said you were going or
Yeah. Oh yeah.
he seems like a foodie. Like he seems
He's a
like a
foodie.
trendy
Yeah.
restaurant. And I'm like looking at his list. I'm like, this looks cool, but like that's not how I eat. I'm like pizza, burgers.
Yeah.
I like a lot of the American food. Well, yeah, but I love food and like in my group I'm known as like the food guy. But I'm reading this list. I'm like, oh my god, he looks at it. He's into like the trendy restaurants. So I was like, where would I pick? And I've been to Pequod's before. It's pretty good, but they have like a lot of the heavy deep dish stuff, which I don't love. I like more of like the New York style pizza.
I do too. I do too. I mean, so I mean, what would you do? Would you get the regional like authentic cuisine, or would you go find what you like and just get the best of what they have here of that
Yeah,
kind?
I'd find some sort of sandwich. Like there's got to be a
Mm,
great sandwich somewhere in
hmm.
Chicago because the problem with the a lot of the pizza there is it's so heavy and it just knocks
Yeah.
you out. And like
Okay.
one slice of that is just like you're done for the day and you want to lie down and it's like it's
You might have convinced me because the sandwich game here I think has got to be so
I feel
solid.
like that's their thing.
Yeah, I think you convinced me. I'll have to find a sandwich place because it's got to have like good bread though, like bread makes the sandwich half the time. So, all right, I'll go back to the drawing board. That's gonna be on my list. I'm gonna head down, hit the cloud gain. I'll walk around the water and maybe I'll hit a museum. I'm not a big museum guy, but the only time I do museums is kind of on these trips when I have a day to kill and I don't mind just walking around aimlessly. So
It's
uh,
so yeah, it's
yeah,
a cool city. Like I've done like the architecture tour on the water, and I don't know if they do that in the winter, but there's probably some cool things going on with the holidays. And is the buzz in the city? Are people talking Pete Carroll in Chicago today?
our good pal Greg Gabriel on Twitter was talking Pete Carroll this morning. It was
I
funny.
didn't see that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think so. I don't think so. I
No,
mean,
that's
we should spend a second on that story. I mean, you and I both know that is Pete Carroll and Pete Carroll's camp. Looking to get his name injected into some of these conversations. And here's my take, Jeff, and I'm really interested in yours. I think Pete would absolutely be a great coaching candidate for a lot of these teams that they'll need to build a program. Like, put him in Jacksonville, put him in with the Jets. Put him with the Giants. Put him with the Bears. Like, I think there's a lot of these places where he could absolutely do a good job in kind of instilling a new culture there, and then winning can come along with it. Problem is, I don't think that that's like a. I mean, I think he could do that over the course of a couple years, maybe three, but I don't think he's a long term option. And I just don't think any owner is going to be like, yeah, let's pair our young quarterback with the oldest coach in the NFL who's also defensive minded. Uh, like who's Pete bringing with him to coach the quarterback and coach the offense? Like, I don't know. I just don't. I don't see it. I think he's done.
Yeah, it's just I get why he wants the job. It's an odd fit though because on one hand, like they kind of do need like that like guy who's built the team before, and like Mike Vrabel's gotten some buzz there.
Mm.
But like I think so much of what their franchise is about now is Caleb Williams, and I know Pete has had a good history of like building up quarterbacks, and we've seen how Russ has been since leaving him, and Carson Palmer, you see. But I think that's a 72-year-old. It's a hard sell, and like the whole Chicago coaching staff on offense this year was like the Seahawks offensive staff from last year, who completely didn't even last a couple months. So I don't think like I don't know who Pete would have as his OC, but I think like a team like the Jets or the Saints, like I think Pete actually could fit there pretty well. But when you have Caleb Williams, who's basically their entire franchise right now, they're all clamoring for Ben Johnson, I imagine, or one of those offensive coaches. Pete would be, I imagine they would be very cynical about that. And yeah, we saw what happened to Bill Belichick, and I know Pete's obviously got a much more rosy personality, but I think at his age, it's a hard sell to get a fan base on board. How long is he going to be around? The young guy is such an easy sell at this point. Yeah, I get why Pete put that out there, or his camp, but yeah, I don't see that happening.
Yeah, I don't see it either. And like, it's funny, Jeff. I mean, I look around and I'm like, which of these teams are really ready to take a step forward if they get the right coach? Maybe you could talk yourself into Jacksonville with Trevor Lawrence. Maybe he just needs the right coach to unlock him.
Yeah,
But like,
there's not a lot of
Caleb,
talent there.
yeah, I don't know, man. Like I think like the Saints are screwed, man. Like
Yeah, they're
they're not gonna. I don't care who their coach is. They're
no,
a
they got
5 year
nothing.
project.
Yeah, they're basically an expansion team at this point.
Yeah. So I mean, I just I don't know. I don't know. And I also look at this Bears squad, and I think Caleb Williams has had this really interesting season where I kind of think it's been disappointing. Has been my overall feel for his season, and then I look at his raw numbers and I'm like, pretty good. Like he's like leading the NFL in interception rate. Like that's pretty good as a rookie.
It is, but it's his numbers are flawed. And if you watch any Bears game, it seems like every time I've watched them recently, they're getting killed in the first half. I think you talked about it in the first look yesterday. They have, I think, the worst first half or first quarter offensive numbers in the league. And a lot of it is just garbage time. They're coming back, and they're kind of teams are in prevent defenses, and he's putting up decent numbers. Like I think the Bears were up like 24-0 on them last week, or 17-0, and they kind of chipped away, but never really made it close. And it's been a lot of those games where they're never like they had the game on Thanksgiving, which they blew, and they haven't really won since. But they aren't in a lot of close games. It's a lot of just he's putting up raw numbers when the team kind of goes into prevent, and he's thrown a lot of these second half touchdowns. But I just haven't seen them like dictate a game or like, well, they haven't won a game since that Hail Mary. And he does some really special things. Like he'll make some throws that like other people just can't do. But the problem I see when
Yeah.
I watch him, I know his numbers are good.
The
The
dude's
plays are
perfect at
never run.
quarterback.
The plays are never run on schedule.
Yeah.
Like
I've seen some of
never.
that though. I like that's been definitely my criticism, but I've seen some of that from him. There's been times where I think in the Lions game the last time on Thanksgiving, I thought he had some moments within structure. I've seen a few of those times where he's excelled within structure. But I was looking, Jeff, at one of like a few numbers that I think tell the story of why it's felt disappointing. Pro Football Reference has a stat that they call bad throw. And this excludes throwaways, includes spikes, all that kind of stuff. But these
Yeah.
are off target bad throws. And the Bears and Caleb Williams are second in the NFL, or 31st, if you want to put it, like second to last, like they're second highest in bad throw rate, over 21%. One out of every five throws has been a bad throw. Do you want to know who leads the NFL in bad throw rate in terms of actually being the having the fewest bad throws?
The fewest.
The fewest bad throws, the lowest bad throw percentage.
No idea.
The Seattle Seahawks,
Really?
11.3%.
Huh.
The top few teams, the Seattle Seahawks, the Tampa Bay Bucks, the Cincinnati Bengals, the Chargers, the Dolphins, some of the more accurate throwing teams. The on-target percentage, the Dolphins are number one, the Seahawks are number two.
Yeah.
The Lions are number three, Chargers, Vikings, Bengals, Commanders. Like, you go down that list, it's like a lot of good quarterbacks, that list. Geno Smith, man, it is a tough eval, isn't it?
It's so hard. It's so hard because I watched CJ Stroud yesterday,
Yes.
and he's basically put in the same situation as Geno. A little worse. They don't have a JSN there, but they have their top receiver, but they got some of the play calling issues. They can't run the ball right now at all, and their offensive line is Seahawks-esque. And they're dysfunctional on offense. They're dysfunctional, and like they had 2 points yesterday, no offensive points. Only points were on safety. And Stroud was like the talk of the league last year, and I think it was Softy's partner Dick Fain was like, "Well, Geno should study C.J. Stroud." I think he tweeted out last week, and
That's
I'm
a
like,
really bad take.
I was just like, "No, C.J. Stroud should be studying Geno." Like
Yeah.
when you watch the situation that Stroud's been in, his numbers are way down. I don't think he has a game over 2 touchdown passes this year, and it's like very poor numbers across the. People in Houston are like, he's taking a big step back. Just we see how big infrastructure is for a quarterback. We saw with Darnold last week, but Geno, who has one of the worst infrastructures I think in the league in terms of offensive line and everything working together, you see how much he overcomes, and we saw a little bit with Sam Howell. And I think like you watch these other quarterbacks who are in these bad situations, and then you see Geno is like constantly he makes his mistakes, but like he's constantly overcoming it. It's such a tough eval because we see Geno's limitations, like the turnovers and like some of him getting emotional and things like that, and like but how do you replace him and how do you ignore all the good stuff he does? It's a really tough spot the Seahawks are in. I don't envy Schneider. This is not an easy decision because we're always like, okay, what's the solution?
It might be an easy decision.
Yeah, and it might be. It's because even if you're skeptical of him and don't like him, like you need an alternative, and there really isn't. Like you see Stroud, and it's like, okay, it kind of makes you appreciate Geno a little bit, but it's tough because there's so many bad quarterbacks right now. Like Caleb, the last 3 games has been awful in terms of just like starting. And he's a young guy, but like, yeah, the Geno eval is just it's so tough because we kind of know what he is at this point, but there's probably a lot more good than bad. I know he's getting older, so it's going to be harder to figure out that contract. But watching Stroud yesterday, I was just struck of how Geno's doing in the exact same situation versus what he's doing.
Well, I mean, think about Jeff. A couple things. If you had said at the end of last year or the beginning of this year, Geno Smith is a better quarterback than C.J. Stroud,
You would have been laughed out of the room.
you would have been absolutely blackballed, man. I mean, like the biggest idiot. You don't know ball. Like, what are you talking about? If you had said Bobby Slowick is a mediocre or not good OC, you would have been absolutely torn apart by all the film watchers, right? This is the next
Yeah.
great OC. And one of the things that strikes me is people talk about, oh, cornerback, not quarterback, cornerback play is really hard to sustain. There's a high variance to that position, or linebacker play, there's a high variance to that position. And I kind of look at quarterback, man, and I'm like, Kirk Cousins, Brock Purdy, C.J. Stroud, like Geno, Sam Darnold,
Yeah.
like all these guys, high variance players at the position. The year that Sam Darnold's having right now, that is like everyone's like, man, this guy deserves a ton of money, like top free agent, all this kind of stuff. It's the same year statistically that Geno had 2 years ago,
Yeah.
like almost exactly. But I think if you think about that, you're like, well, no, Sam Darnold's playing better, but it's probably because his team is 13-2. So I don't know, man. Like I think to your point, that position has so much depending on the structure around it, and it's you go back, you think about Geno Smith. What does he have? 4 red zone interceptions this year.
Yeah.
I mean, I know this is a stupid thing to say, but if you flip those were 4 red zone touchdowns, which is on any other years, if half of those were red zone touchdowns and the other 2 were incompletions, let's just put it that way. You're talking about 19 touchdowns, 13 interceptions, not good, but not bad. If it's all 4, you're talking about 21 touchdowns and 11 interceptions, and that's perfectly acceptable. Like his red zone decision making has been the thing
That's it.
that's really sunk this season. And I don't know if, I don't know. I don't know that I believe that he's just a bad red zone decision maker now and forever and for always.
Yeah, it's just the hard part with him is that he seems to make like 1 or 2 like catastrophic decisions a game, and like the throw he makes on the run in their own territory last week, and it's just this is part of who he is at this point. Like he's kind of too late in his career to be like this is something he's going to fix. And the red zone issues have been problematic, but some of it is personnel related, some of it's play calling related. It's just I think you wrote it really well. I think he seems to still struggle with the risk reward at certain spots.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, if you take 1 of the 2 of those out of there, I agree. The season looks totally different. Like if he doesn't throw 1 of those against the Rams, they win that game, and they're probably making the playoffs. And we're not even talking about this. If they don't take that sack last week, if they just run the ball there, we're probably having a different conversation. No one's really worried about that red zone. I mean, the interception he throws in his own territory. So it's a fine line. It's the one thing. Like, there's a couple of people on Twitter always telling me how elite Geno is. I don't think Geno's elite. I think Geno's a good quarterback with some flaws, and he's got a tough situation. But the red zone thing, I don't know if that's because he was 2022. He was really good in the red zone, and so as the personnel is not great for a red zone team. DK doesn't win contested catches. JSN's got short arms. They don't run the ball. It's a tough spot, but it's more the decision making. He's putting the ball. He's trying to be a hero sometimes and putting the ball into windows that aren't there, rather than just. It's good to throw it away and take a field goal.
Well,
And
by the numbers, Jeff, sorry to interrupt. By the numbers, I don't know that you can actually make the case that he's making bad throws at a higher rate than anybody else. In fact, I think all the numbers, whether it's turnover worthy plays or on target percentage or bad throw rate, they all point to him being one of the best in the NFL in those. But I think you maybe can make the case he's had some bad luck, that the percentage of his bad throws that have been picked off is wild, like compared to other quarterbacks. And that's where I get into some of this variance stuff.
Well, there's that game Stafford has where he throws 3 interceptions
Exactly.
right into the hands of the 49ers.
Exactly.
And they don't catch any of them. If they catch one of those, I think the Niners win that game. And we're talking about a very different Thursday nighter this week. So you're right. It's a fine line between luck and bad decisions, and it's he should have put them in position to win the game last time, and then because the defense screws up, he has to do it again, and then so it's a really fine line. And like when you watch so many of these other teams, like the Tuas and the Purdy and the guys who are kind of screwing up the same kind of situations, or they're not carrying their teams the way Geno is, it's hard to build a case on the other side. And look, I'm critical of Geno, but I've yet to see a solution that makes sense. And I've yet to see someone come to me with like, okay, here's a better plan. Like unless it's like trying to tank the next couple of years.
Right.
But I don't think this roster coach would be on board with that. And John Schneider can't do that. He'd be fired.
I'm
So
just not sure it makes sense to, right?
no,
Like,
there's also a million bad teams. Like you're just gonna end up with the ninth pick or something then. And
yeah, I mean, going through right now, and I'm going to do a little calculation here because I'm curious about this. But while I do that, I mean, this is me being totally honest, Jeff. My morning after column on Monday, I wrote that same morning, Monday morning. I just I'm worried. My thought leaving that stadium was that the ownership, from a business standpoint, is not going to sign off on a extension. Like that this is just not a guy that fans are behind, and that's going to be a factor.
yeah,
By that afternoon, I was writing another article basically talking about this, all the noise around DK Metcalf and Geno Smith. And people are like, oh, you don't know ball if you're talking about trading DK Metcalf. What do you like? Totally misunderstanding the conversation. It's not that he's a bad receiver, he's not valuable, or that you're going to get some great return. Anyway, I won't go into all that. But my prediction as I went through, and I kind of tried to definitely lay out the case on both sides. Keep Geno, extend him, get rid of him. Trade, no, don't trade him, but like, bring someone else in. Do the same for DK Metcalf. Trade him, keep him, extend him. I came to the conclusion, my prediction is I think they're going to extend both of them. Like, that was the same day. It just, like, if you really, really look at the options for the Seahawks at quarterback,
it's bad. It's bad.
I don't see how you don't come to a conclusion where it's like, okay, assuming the Seahawks want to drop their cap number for Geno, finding an incentive-laden deal that you can come to an agreement with him on that has a high enough ceiling that Geno's like, okay, if I play the way I want to play, I'm going to get paid appropriately. Like, that just makes too much sense, man. I mean, people can hate it, but that just makes too much sense.
Yeah, and like I'm sure Schneider would love to have like a long-term plan in place, and I'm sure he would have loved to been able to draft a guy in the last few years. But a lot of these guys we looked at in the draft, they haven't really hit. And Will Levis is benched already. Anthony Richardson can barely throw. Spencer Rattler, a lot of guys people were like clamoring for as an insurance policy. I don't know if anyone saw him last Monday, but my God, he's brutal. So it's not like all these, they passed on all these different options. Like they took a flyer on Sam Howell. 1 year in, it looks like a waste of a move. You were down there. I saw him play the one game, and he just looks awful. And so, yeah, find me a solution. I look at the names. It's Kirk Cousins. And you're entering that bleak pool of what some of these teams are in, where they're kind of going through year after year, and they're like, what do we do now? Like the Denver Broncos were in that one for years. And, God, the list of quarterbacks, like I don't know if you've seen Drew Lock play this year. It's been
Yeah.
It's been horrible. Like me and you did not like Drew Lock before. He is, yeah, he can't be a considered. And not great that John thought so highly that they wanted him to start probably 2 years ago and they wanted him around. But there's nothing out there. Like Jameis Winston, you want him? Like he's the exact same player he is every year. And so, yeah, when you really think about it, it's probably not the best from a team building standpoint, even though I think it makes logical sense to keep him on the last year of his deal and wait and see. But if you're going to try to fix this O-line and fix some of the issues they have, you got to get that cap number off $38 million. And you're probably right. That's probably the most logical conclusion.
So, all right, I just I just did this calculation where I looked at turnover-worthy throws, plays on the year, and how many interceptions a player has, and what percentage of those turnover-worthy plays not all interceptions are coming off turnover-worthy plays. There can be just amazing interceptions that happen too. So for what it's worth. And then I just basically like what percentage of your turnover-worthy plays have been intercepted, or at least something like that. 100% for Geno. 15 interceptions, 15 turnover-worthy plays. That is insane. The guys that are close to that, Bo Nix has 11 interceptions and 13 turnover-worthy plays. Jordan Love, that's 84%. Jordan Love, 80%. He has 8 interceptions on 10 turnover-worthy plays. I'm sorry, that's Jaden Daniels, not Jordan Love. Jordan Love is 11 interceptions and 13. Bo Nix was 11 and 12, so that's 91%. But like as I go down this list, I mean, some of these guys are getting super fortunate. Justin Herbert has 3 interceptions on 5 turnover-worthy plays.
Yeah.
Caleb Williams has 5 interceptions on 16 turnover-worthy plays. So like 30%. So you're talking about a guy that I think part of the story with Geno is just some really bad friggin' luck, dude.
Yeah, definitely. Like there's the one where like AJ Barner's coming across and the Rams guy clearly holds him, yanks it, and then it tips off his hands. And there's a couple of them, or where guys like don't finish their route or things like that. But it's just I don't know. Like there's last game where he just like he threw 2 or 3 passes and he's playing on one leg right now. It looks like.
Yeah.
And it just like looks like it should have been easily intercepted, but
Yeah.
But he hasn't done that this year really. Like the last couple of years, his turnover-worthy plays were way higher. It's just been, I think with him, even luck, it's just been timing, like where it's happened.
Yeah.
And that's kind of luck, I guess, because it's just been unfortunate where he throws an interception in the red zone, and we're like, oh man, like if he threw that at the 50, like it wouldn't be nearly as bad. And so the situational thing. And sometimes you wonder, like, is the team coaching well? Because situational awareness has been an issue for this entire team this season with penalties and mistakes. And so it's something that this coaching staff needs to get better at.
Yeah.
And I think
no,
that's part of the
that.
story that's not being talked about.
Yeah, I think that's, I mean, when you're the volume of throwing that they're doing, like how many fewer interceptions would he have if they actually ran the ball when they should run the ball,
I'm still mad about that 1st and 5 play call last week. So,
yeah, I'll say it again, man. I can get behind a 1st and 5 pass play in plus territory if you got a good one dialed up.
Yeah, totally. If it's a
Like,
shot play, if it's a,
if you fool them, if you are consistently trying to pass in running downs in order to get an advantage by having the defense assume you're going to run, and the defense is continually.
Yep. Looks like you got my internet today in Chicago, so I don't know. Nope. Are you back? Well, Brian is frozen, so let me see.
With a gift of 5 Hawk Blogger memberships. Thank you so much, Matt.
Did you freeze or did I freeze?
I think you did, man. I don't know. We'll find out.
Okay.
Chris Clark has. I'm on hotel Wi-Fi, so who knows?
So I was wondering if I screwed up or.
No, who knows, man.
My internet's been good lately.
It has been. The Canadian internet coming through. Chris Clark giving away 5 Hawk Blogger memberships. If you get one of these free memberships from Matt or Chris, please consider giving one, man. We're doing pay it forward on this, and we try to give as many great people in the community as possible. Waternapple asks in a super chat, only Hawks game I've ever been to was 0-17 versus Packers in 2021, or 17-0, I think it was.
Yeah.
Going to this game tonight, no way it is worse, right? I will never, ever curse a game by saying no way it can be worse than something else. That's not
that game was pretty rough. Russell came back too early from that finger injury.
Mm-hmm.
And like he had that story coming out of the media that like the doctors said he recovered, and like some people think he still hasn't recovered from that. I think that's bullshit, but I think that's an excuse. But they actually played awesome defensively that game. Like Jamal Adams had like a couple interceptions, and they did amazing against that offense. And yeah, their offense was so bad in that game. I remember I was
The
hoping
offense was
Geno would
terrible.
play because that was right after that Jacksonville game where Geno broke out, and
Geno tweeted after that game too.
I remember that.
He wanted. He was like,
Yeah, I don't know what this game's going to be like tonight. I have no feel for it because like it's kind of irrelevant, somewhat relevant. They're on short week with an injured quarterback. Road teams on Thursday night typically are not good.
mm-hmm.
Big travel. I have no idea what we're walking in for.
I think it'll depend a lot on. I think it'll depend a lot on how Chicago comes out as well. Well, let's talk about it in 1 second. We got one more super chat here. Dogzilla Monster says, "How's the weather in Chicago?" It is downright balmy. Like I was out there, in my hoodie and a puffer jacket, no gloves, no scarf. It was fine. It's not chilly. It'll be tonight. It's not even going to dip down. It's like going to be in the mid 40s. So it's just, I don't think weather is going to be a factor in this one. Part of me is a little bit. I would have liked to see like be here for a snow game. That would have been kind of fun.
Usually the
But
wind is
getting out
crazy
of here
there.
would have been a problem.
Yeah, usually it's like pretty windy at this time of year. Like it's
Mm-hmm.
hard to throw the ball. One of the things some of the executives I know have been very critical of Ryan Poles about is usually you get some bad weather in Chicago this time of year, and they're a team that wants to contend, and they're built to be a 3 receiver, 11 personnel team that can't run the ball, and they're not physical. The bad O line, they're like, that makes no sense for Chicago. Like I heard someone call them like a Madden team, like a kid, like a team that like a 12-year-old would make in Madden, where they
Mm-hmm.
draft a Dunze ninth overall, they get Keenan Allen, but they don't take a left tackle, they don't take Byron Murphy, and so it's interesting. Yeah, a bad weather Chicago game would have been very fun to watch. But it's just such a weird vibes game because the Bears look like they're in Cabo mode at this point. Like they know their coach is getting fired. They've lost every game since that Hail Mary thing. Their defense is just tanked. I saw you talking about the numbers yesterday in the first look. And the primetime game, sometimes it's like, okay, this is a chance to showcase themselves, so maybe they'll be up for it. But like there was that game against the Niners a couple weeks ago where they just like won like 38-3, where
Yeah.
David Lombardi was like, Caleb Williams sucks. Like I was just like, oh, come on. But they have not gotten up for a lot lately. Caleb will pull them back.
Yeah.
But this might be the one game they do get up for. So I have no idea what we're in for tonight.
I think there'll be home game, primetime game. They're home for the holidays. You know, I I think they're gonna be their best that they can be tonight, at least to start the game. They've been a poor starting team. Like they just like the Seahawks, they
Yeah.
generally start out behind. They're worse than the Seahawks in that regard, as a matter of fact. But um, if they get off to a fast start, then this will be a game. If the Seahawks are able to do what they haven't done and get out to a faster start, then I don't think the Bears are going to give you, like, they're not going to be a team that just, like, rockets from behind. I don't think that that's a likely game script for this one. And as I look at this matchup, there's just no question the Seahawks are the better team. Like, it's just, there's no question from almost any angle. Whether they win is a totally different question. And the reason this game matters, I know people know this, but just to be clear, because some people are overstating that this game doesn't matter. If the Seahawks lose this game and the Rams win, it's over.
It's over. They
If the
clinch.
Seahawks win this game and the Rams win, it's not over.
Strength of victory. Yeah.
Right. So like the Seahawks do have a part to play in this, and winning this game does matter, but it's just not. It's not. It's not definitive of what happens if they win. So it does matter. Look, Jeff. I think you're gonna be. What I really would love to see, and one of the things that the Bears have struggled with. Caleb Williams has been sacked more than any other quarterback in the NFL, and now his starting left tackle's out for the rest of the year. First time he's been out, and their starting left guard is out. Jake Curran's going to be playing left guard. Like a guy named, I think his name's like Borum or something, is going to be their left tackle. Can we have a game where we dominate on the pass rush? Like, it feels like the pass rush has just not gotten home. Like, since that Arizona game where it started out with 2 sacks in the first series, like,
Yeah.
I want a pass rush game, man.
Yeah, it's been like the edge rushers have been. Even they asked Macdonald on this Monday show, and he was just like, "It's been good, but not. There's a way to go." And he was guarding his words. And I thought Chenna's done some really cool things, like in terms of run defense and just blowing up plays. But he doesn't look as explosive, obviously, coming off 2 pretty big injuries. And he alluded to the Derek Hall's been playing through something. His numbers have kind of gone way down. But you're right, the edge rush especially. We saw the couple games where Leonard Williams just dominated, and we had the domino effect that had. But this has to be a game where the defensive line just takes over. We haven't got enough of those. That's where the majority of their talent is on defense, and they didn't get to Darnold. They moved him off the spot a little bit last week, but that's a team that gives up pressure, and we were hoping for more out of there. The Green Bay game, they couldn't get near him. There's just been too many games this year where they haven't disrupted the quarterback at all. And with their left tackle who's out was not good to begin with. He's had a bad year, Braxton Jones. They got a guy I've never heard of, and if I've never heard of him, that's bad because I'm a sicko. Jake Curran, who was one of the worst O-linemen in the league last year, starting at left guard. So he's going to play Byron Murphy and Jaron Reed, maybe Leonard. So there is no reason for this group, other than their right tackle. It's a horrific offensive line. And this has to be a game if the Seahawks should just win it easily, that the line. I'm still annoyed. I can't remember one of the guys I follow on Twitter. He's either New Era or Docs. I can't remember his name. Put a tweet of like the Byron Murphy penalty last week. One thing I didn't realize, and it made me like I couldn't get past it for a couple days. If you watch that play, Draymond Jones actually has Darnold sacked from the bottom, and he has him by the legs. So even if Byron Murphy did nothing, they had him sacked. And like I did not realize. I watched the play in slow motion like 5 times, where Murphy just like powers through a double team. It's pretty incredible in the biggest spot of the game. But I did not realize Draymond had pushed back the left tackle and ripped him by the legs. So if Byron Murphy just stood there, and I'm not blaming him, this is a bad luck thing. They sack him. It's 3rd and 19, and they win the game. And this game tonight is massive.
Yeah.
It's like, I haven't been able to get over that. And just seeing that Draymond Jones had him sacked made me so irritated. But yeah, back to your point. This has to be a pass rush game. Like we need to see Mike Macdonald just crush this off, sort of like the Giants game last year on Monday night where they just dominated Daniel Jones. Like this has a script to be that. And if it's not, I'll be pretty disappointed.
Yeah, I feel like it has to be. Like, let's hold the bar. Let's not move the goalposts on this. Like, this should be a game where we're talking about Caleb Williams under pressure regularly. I mean, I'm talking at least a 40% pressure rate in this game. And, like, honestly, like, we should be pushing 45, 50% pressure rate. Like, with this offensive line in the state it is and what the Seahawks have on defensive line. And I think that, like, 3 sacks is the minimum bar for me, but I'd like to see 5+ sacks in this game. You know, like, I know that's a lot, but he's been sacked 9 times in a game, multiple, like 9 times, 7 times. Like, he's been sacked a lot, 60 times in 15 games. So it's not out of the question. And I just want to see that, man. I want to see that. I would love to see Byron Murphy make it right, you know, with, like Bill, like yes, he got the penalty, but to your point, let's not forget that he just destroyed his offensive line opponent to get to where he was. I want to see more of that, and maybe he can build on that. Maybe he'll be pissed off that he didn't get the sack and that had the penalty, and maybe he'll build on it. So like, that's maybe the number one thing I want to see in this game. Number 2, run the friggin' ball, dude. I'm going to keep saying it. I know it's crazy. I know I should just give up, but I'm not built like that. And I want to see them run. I don't care if they hand it to George Halani. Run the ball, please.
That touchdown drive they had that should have set up the winning touchdown. The whole thing is set up by running the football. They get the big runs from Charbonnet and McIntosh early. McIntosh, he looks pretty solid too. Like when Like Kenneth Walker goes out and like I didn't even flinch, which is pretty telling of. I can't believe I like Charbonnet now. It's shocking, but
Yeah.
there was just so many moments last time where I'm just screaming, "Run the damn!" That third quarter, they run it twice, and I'm just yelling at my TV, "Run!" And every time they run, they hit chunk plays. It felt like in the second half.
Hmm.
And sure, you're gonna get stuffed sometimes. You're gonna lose yards. They don't have a great run blocking line. We're aware of that. But that touchdown drive, how the run just set up everything else, it just like jumped out to the screen to me. And I think I put out a tweet in all caps, like that's what running the ball does. And it should open up the under center game and everything else that they do well on offense. And there's 2 games left. I don't know if they're going to all of a sudden change. But on a short week where you're not going to put in a lot of creative passing plays against a team that has not been great up front on defense, you got to run the. And I watched the Lions game last week against the Bears, just kind of scouting them out. And Jahmyr Gibbs was just running the ball at them so easily. And obviously much different offensive line, but every run was just easy for him. And like Charbonnet looks good the more he gets volume. And I can't believe how much I'm just banging my head against this because I felt like it's been like 4 years now. But this year especially, the lack of running has driven me to like a madhouse every Seahawks game. And I don't know why I expect it to be different, but like I'm with you. I'm going to keep hammering it.
Do you think that there's a chance? Well, let me say, because there's obviously a chance. What do you think the percentage chance is that I have completely misread the situation with Ryan Grubb and that he'll be back next year?
15?
Let me make the case for why they should do it. And I don't believe this for what it's worth, but this is the case I would make. Anyone who is the OC will benefit from improvement to the offensive line that'll come both from development of the players that they have drafted this year, as well as investment into new players next year. He'll have a full off season to make adjustments to what he learned this season, the same way Mike Macdonald will now have a full off season to make adjustments to how he coaches the team and runs his off season program. He will have opportunity to go back and look at all the NFL defenses that he struggled with or problems and what worked for other teams. And so he can build out a little bit more of his playbook. He can have continuity with his offensive line coach and with the quarterback and not have to bring in yet another OC for them to learn another thing. He and Ryan and Mike Macdonald have had a season to work through where they have disconnects and they've built some rapport and they'll have the off season to keep working on it. As I say it, I believe all those things are credible.
Now you're scaring me.
I'm not
That sounds
saying
like
I
coach
think that,
thing.
I'm not saying that that's what I think is going to happen or should. But I am like, there's part of me that's like, Ryan Grubb is not. I know he's frustrating to us at times, especially in the run game, and a lot of fans just overall. He's not a disaster as an OC. He's not like you can't have this guy. He's not. That's not what he is. By almost any measure, he's not that. I know some fans would like to say that, but I don't think that's true. My whole perspective on it's been built off of reading between the lines of how Mike Macdonald talks or does not talk about him, and reading between the lines about what Mike Macdonald's philosophy is on how you establish the run, how important it is to your team identity, how important it is to red zone offense, and how different Ryan Grubb talks about it, how different Ryan Grubb's actions show it. All of it's conjecture.
It is, but then Brady Henderson comes out and basically says that McDonald had to be convinced to hire him because of the balance issues, which remain prevalent. Also, Brady in that same kind of article alluded that a lot of the OC candidates they wanted had been scooped up. So this year, where there's going to be a lot of candidates, it's very hard for me based on some of the comments. And me and you have been on this pretty early. I know Rob Staten did the same thing. Just he's been taking some swipes at him. Oh, and then you brought up the point about him, the way he talks about dirty and how different that sounds. I think that was very illuminating. So it's hard for me not to get past that Brady Henderson point where he had to be sold on him. It feels like an arranged marriage. And now
Mm-hmm.
that they have the time, and they're probably not going to make the playoffs, so they're going to have the same time as everyone else. It's hard for me to not think they're going to want a guy that aligns with him philosophically. And again, I've been saying this the whole time. I remember you put out that article about Grubb a month or so ago, just saying about the challenges he's had, how he's kind of getting a bad rap. My issue has never been Ryan Grubb sucks or he's an idiot or whatever. I've just always thought, and this is where I still stand today, that philosophically they're not aligned.
Mm-hmm.
And again, Grubb does some really unique stuff in terms of like passing concepts, and they've gone a career year at JSN. He's a top 5 receiver in a lot of areas. But I just think it still looks a little too collegey to me. I don't. I would be really. I'd have a tough time with him bringing him back.
It would be interesting. It would be interesting. I mean, that is not something that pretty much the traditional media is reporting on or talking about. There's been no leaks around this. This is all, I think I have probably promoted this more than anybody else.
I haven't seen it. I haven't seen it within the local media at all.
So I could be totally wrong. I could be totally wrong. We'll find out soon enough. But setting that aside, one of the things that, as you were talking a little while ago about the run game, I was thinking, like, man, you remember Anthony Bradford? Like the guy that started all those games at right guard.
I would never like to see him again.
I don't miss them.
No.
And the reason I think that, I mean, everyone's like going to laugh at that, but Sataola Mea has, like, by PFF standards, he's been graded like one of the worst guards in football since he's been starting. I don't feel that way about him. I know he's had some really bad reps. Like, I'm not blind to it. But the offensive line has felt more functional in the run game and the pass game with him in there. Am I like rose-colored glasses on this?
No. I think you've seen a lot of moments. Like, we've done shows talking about him. The Packers game was really rough for him. He got exposed.
Yeah.
And look, the NFL, this is what it does to you. You get exposed and you have rough moments. And there's a reason he was a 6th rounder. He had issues with foot speed. And they attacked him. And it wasn't a great player that beat him. It was like TJ Slaton or something like that. I can't remember who it was. And he had a rough game. And that one for sure. But, like, I thought the Jets game, the Cardinals game, I thought last week he was up and down last week, but he's shown way more flashes of high level run blocking and toughness. And you can live with him as a right guard. I don't think you can live with Anthony Bradford as a right guard.
No, I don't either.
I've not agreed with PFF's grading of him. I thought they were way off in the Cardinals game. I thought they were way off in the Jets game. I don't know whether he got last week. I didn't really see, but I think he's looked pretty solid. Oluwatimi is the one who's kind of lost some. He's lost some kind of where we were hoping after that San Francisco game they really found something, and I think his limitations, like we've talked about in the past, they've been exposed. Like the interception at the end of the game, he gets crushed on a 3-man rush that just he doesn't have enough natural power, and we've talked about that. But he's a competent center. He's not a plus center, but I think left guard, and if they come in, they get a left guard, they bring in some more upgrade, and they bring in another guy at center, and they bring back everyone else on the line. Like, I'd be fine if LeMay is starting a right guard next year and Haynes is competing at right guard or left guard. But I think they really got to upgrade the left guard spot. I think that's a spot that's like jumping off the page to me. I think they got to upgrade there. And I think ultimately center should be upgraded. But I've been fine with the LeMay. Like, I would like to see him grow, have an offseason, kind of attack it. I think you've seen enough moments that there might be something there.
As we kind of start to wrap on this, Jeff, looking at this game and looking at the matchups here, what do you think? What do you think is going to decide this game? What are the parts of this game that are going to make or break it for the Seahawks?
Well, I said last week was the run game, and turned out to be right. The Seahawks didn't run the ball. This is number one was the thing we talked about before, so I don't know if we need to revisit this much, but the Seahawks defensive line needs to take over the game. They need to pressure Caleb Williams. When he gets pressured and he's on the move, his like just throwaways or just dead plays feels so high. And with those two tackles out, and Caleb can make some special plays on the run. That's what his thing is. But if they're constantly pressuring him, this should be a game. If they're not, and he can kind of sit back, then they're gonna have a shot. Offensively, again, same sort of things. If they get back and they can't function up front, and this is not a good defensive line. Like Montez Sweat is a good player. I'm sure Daryl Taylor's going to be pretty motivated for this game. He's been a zero since week one, where everyone's was wrapping their heads around that trade. They got to protect up front in a capable way. They can. Like last week, the offensive line wasn't great, but it was good enough to win that game against Minnesota, which I thought was a huge win for the Seahawks. So I think really they got to take over on defense. But what Washington, I mean, what the Bears have are good receivers. Keenan Allen is a really good slot receiver. Rome Odunze has his moments. DJ Moore. So this is one of those games where Reek is kind of hanging around and head elsewhere. And the corner's got to step up tonight. Trey Brown had an awful sequence last week. Probably lost them the game, honestly. We talk about that sack, but that was a 4-point swing. If those 4 points aren't there, I think they win that game. So the corners, whether it's Josh Jobe, they got to be on tonight. And the third one would be just offensive line can't be a disaster.
Yeah, I think those are all good ones. It's funny as you're going through that, and I was thinking about Lamea again. One of our other draft targets we talked about, Christian Mahogany, has been getting reps. Another 6th-round guard went to Detroit, and he looks like a quality starting guard, dude.
Not happy about that one. We wanted them to double
So
down on
frustrating.
guards.
So
We wanted them to double down. They did double down ultimately. They took
They did.
Lamea. But man, it's not great when they're saying guards are overdrafted and overrated when the 6th-round guard looks pretty good on the Detroit line.
If you
And
go
your
back
guy
and
in the
watch,
3rd round.
if you go back and watch our draft coverage, we were talking about Mahogany from like the 4th round on.
Yeah, and we like Mason McCormick, who's been playing with Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
And he hasn't been great. He's kind of leveled off. But
Yeah.
when your
Yeah.
draft pick, Christian Haynes, is now on the bench for one of the worst guard groups in the league, and we got all these other guards that we handpicked are starting, yeah, maybe you go talk to John if you see him in Chicago, see if you can get some.
I'm
Get in
sure
the
he'll
draft
be
room.
thrilled to hear my my input. All right, we got one more super chat here, and then we'll get you out of here. From Bernie says, if Mike Macdonald had to be convinced to hire Grubb, it implies John Schneider liked him. Does it reframe your thinking if John Schneider is the ultimate decision maker? What do you think, Jeff?
So I'd heard from behind the scenes that Schneider and even Pete, dating back to last year, they liked Grubb. They had circled him as a candidate. First, they knew they were probably going to move on from Waldron. And so I've always got the sense that John was the arranged marriage. And if you remember the OC hiring process, Seahawks fans were going nuts because there was that week after Macdonald got hired and the Seahawks were just interviewing guys and they kind of went dark. And then there was that night where Grubb got hired and we all celebrated. But the Seahawks process was like weirdly thorough and like took forever. And I think they really had to sell Macdonald on this. And yes, Schneider does dictate the coaching staff move now, but I think as the year gone on and you've seen the team's issues and you've seen where they are, they're essentially at the same spot they were last year with, I think, just a much tighter defense and more offensive issues, honestly, than last year. I don't think I don't think John, who is in charge of the operation, would be like, you can't fire your OC because I like him. I think him and Mike have connected pretty fast, and I think they would want to be on the same page for that. So I would be shocked if it's like, this is my guy, I like him, we're keeping him. Like, that is not what I think John Schneider would do.
I think the other part of this that people are missing out on is I'm not convinced Ryan Grubb will want to come back. I think he may be like, I got a taste of working for a defensive head coach, and maybe that's not the environment I want to be in. Like, he may want to go back to college. He may want to, like, there's a lot of things he might want different. So I wouldn't just assume that it's as simple as what Mike wants. Gonna be interesting. I'm looking forward to this game tonight. I really am. It's gonna be fun to be out here in Chicago. I think it's going to be tough for the team to come back physically and emotionally so soon after Sunday.
Yeah,
game.
that's a tough turnaround, man.
Tough turnaround. But the nice thing in these situations, there is a talent gap. And so usually the way it works in these games is if you have the better quarterback, if you have the better talent, if you have the better coaching, all which I think are very clearly the case with the Seahawks in this game, you can tolerate some mistakes and some sluggishness and some like not your best effort. Like the 90% Seahawks should be able to win this game, but it would shock nobody, including me, if that doesn't turn out to happen. And there could be some highlight plays. This could turn out to be a shootout. Like that's not out of the question in this game. So, gonna be interesting. I'm
Can you
certainly
make a
looking
score
forward to
prediction?
Yeah. Why don't you go ahead? You go first.
I'll go Seahawks 27, Bears 17.
Okay. I'm gonna go. I don't know why I think this is going to be the score, but I'm going to go. The Seahawks are going to break 30. They're going to score 35 points in this game, and the Bears are going to have 14. Gonna call it a big win. Seems crazy, but that's what my gut's telling me, so I'm going to go with it, and we'll go from there. I sacrificed myself last week when I didn't think the Seahawks were going to win, but I wanted to give fans one of us to predict that they'd beat the Vikings. I almost ended up getting a bonus, but
I thought they'd get killed, so I was pretty encouraged watching the game. That felt like a playoff game, honestly.
yeah. I'll be encouraged when they win those games. I mean,
Yeah, well, I was encouraged during the game.
yeah.
I was beside myself after the game.
Yes. All right, Jeff. Thank you so much. Happy Hanukkah to you and to your family. And then we will catch up with you Saturday for Seahawks Saturday. Does that sound good? I think it does because he's just gone. He's gone. Appreciate all of you guys for tuning in. If you haven't already, given the show a like and click subscribe, please do. We got a super chat here from Sabin Cent Studio. Happy holidays. Thank you, Brian and Jeff. Well, thank you, man. Really, really appreciate it. I want to remind you, it is a great time to head on over to jkboots.com. Use promo code HawkBlogger, get you 10% off. The best pair of boots you are ever going to own. These are fantastic boots. They have cowboy boots, they have work boots, they have boots you wear with your jeans, like all in between. These are handcrafted, handmade, 6 to 8 weeks that they put these things together in the state of Washington, in Spokane, family-owned company, really, really good people over there. And not only do you get 10% off, but you get a chance to win a Seahawks-themed pair of boots that only you will have, and you will help contribute to the Wildland Firefighters Foundation. We've already given away 3 pairs of boots to wildland firefighters that protect the Pacific Northwest forests from fire by having the best footgear they can to protect themselves. So appreciate everyone who's been supporting us through this promo. It's a great one. If you don't need them yourself, make sure you let your local firefighter, police officer, construction worker, plumber, whoever, contractor know about the JK Boots deal with code HawkBlogger. They will thank you. I will have you all for post-game show later tonight. There's a small chance I might do a man on the street thing where I talk to some Bears fans, so keep an eye. The only way you'll know if these things are coming live is if you click subscribe and click the little bell to get notified when I go live, so you'll know if I have a chance to do that or not. Hopefully I'll be on the field. Hopefully it will be after another win, and hopefully there's a special guest that I've been working on for a couple of weeks. If they win, I think there's a decent chance we will have a pretty fun guest on the post-game show. If we don't, then you'll probably just have me and the guys. But that's also fun. So we will see you then. And until then, thanks everybody. Have a great rest of your day.